That's right everyone, Dragon Ball Super the Manga Chapter 84 is out, and I gotta be careful what I say here. In any case, this saga is looking likely to be coming to its conclusion, despite me thinking that it's actually been dragged out longer due to the movie being delayed, and it can easily be found when it comes out using Viz Media's online portal, where you too can read other Shonen Jump works. I remind you, I'm not sponsored by Viz, but I just like the service, and I like to get the manga when it's meant to come out, and I like to support official sources and workers. And I hope that you do too. And I'm certain, the Bardock atmosphere is ringing true. Still, despite the characters snuffing it about 40 years or so ago, and being very much pushed as a brand new hero in this day and age with minus being a thing. But again, I gotta be careful, and I'll give my full explanation of my thoughts later in the video. Chapter 84, Pride of the Warrior Race. All this is doing is turning me into a warrior about how this manga is being totally derailed from its original and most likely premise. But again, we gotta remind ourselves where we were last time out and figure out why things have left people utterly confused for why the show and the story is the way it is right now. Where we last left off, this chapter was mostly covering the flashback proper of the battle between Bardock and Gas. Thanks to the acquisition of the Scouter, which to be fair does explain why we are getting a flashback outside of plot convenience, I will admit it's a fair use. We start to see Bardock being painted in a very valiant light, and with admittedly very cool visuals that are quite raw and intense for the medium that we are used to. Gas is left utterly dumbfounded why Bardock keeps on fighting, despite being outclassed in terms of power, but Bardock replies with the quite cool idea of him doing it because he has no other options. Saiyans fight to the end, and because he wants to win. And by proxy, Vegeta and Goku need to do the same thing, and believe in their Saiyan spirit! So that was the thing that would beat Gas? A nebulous paradigm? Let's just see where this goes, huh? We start the chapter with Oatmeal reporting that there is no more to listen to in regards to the overall battle that Bardock and Gas had, and Goku is just left speechless, like we all are right now. But then Goku's all the more distracted by further memories that he is now acquiring whilst he was in his nursing capsule. Moments of Bardock returning from a battle and looking worse for wear, with Gine comforting him, and the former coming over to the capsule and greeting his son in there. Could this have been from the battle with Gas, that we saw him like that? Well, probably, but it's only snippets, and I will say that this sequence in isolation, it really is quite wholesome and touching and quite interesting. It just pains me so much that it was used in a place where it really shouldn't be, and it ultimately taints the overall experience. But again, the specific content of seeing Bardock and Gine going about their day-to-day lives, from Goku's point of view, it was very nice, but it would have been better in a different saga, really. We then of course see the moment where Bardock frantically wakes Goku up, puts him in the Saiyan pod, and promptly sends him away to Earth and away from danger. But seeing this now placed in the official manga and not just in minus, it kinda detracts from Goku's special rise to power. It turns out that now, thanks to Bardock's wish and whatnot, and the way he leaves planet Vegeta, that he was destined for greatness of all Saiyan kind in the end. So even more like Superman than before. But I will look past that for now because we've said all there is to be said in regards to that point, so let's keep going. Amidst all this, Goku and Vegeta are figuring out or reminding themselves about Saiyan pride, for some reason, and that they wish that they were a carrot. The prince is reminding himself not to be ashamed of his pride, like he was earlier in the arc when he was training with Beerus, while he was lamenting his people's mistakes, and instead, now, owning it. It's a little bit backwards in my opinion, really. I'm not really a fan of this. I liked how Vegeta was more aware of how flawed the Saiyans were and that he evolved and become more human. But I guess in terms of raw power and iconography of his character, it didn't gel with him to remain like that, and so thusly I guess it had to be reverted. But then there's classic Vegeta when he's angry that it was Bardock that had to remind him of his pride. Yeah, Vegeta, you and me both. Why Bardock? After some bickering, Monito offers to patch them up a little as well as giving them new clothes. Those clothes from the drafts. You think that was going to happen for the rest of the saga? No. I assure you, it was just a momentary panel because on the next page, when Gas finds them both, they are back in their regular gear and fully healed. Actually, That reminds me of something. Where's Granolah in all of this? I don't think I've seen him at all in this chapter. In his own story. Huh. In any case, the Saiyans approach Gas, but they need to get closer to kick his ass. But Gas will let them come as close as they like, whilst the pair of them are fighting over who gets to end Gas first. Well, that'd be Pepto-Bismol at the end of the day. But actually, it's a combination of Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct. Yep, that's the money shot of the saga if ever I saw one. I like how Oil summates the techniques to Super Duper Instinct and Massive Ego Boost. I think Brandon might have done a cheeky nod to Super Duper Super Saiyan. I see you, little DBZA reference there. The fight begins, but Gas is still handing them down as expected. But this time at least the Saiyans are giving it their all, and they're not on the back foot here. They are the ones pushing Gas around instead of the other way around. And I will hand it to Toyotaro that his improvement is continuing in that the fluidity of this battle is notable, and that the way the pair are fighting Gas is really logical and doesn't feel imbalanced, like they're actually using their two separate powers as similar entities. Top work. Despite this though, Gas has to resort to his weapon technique with the mace, and he does get the hit on them, both, but Goku is his target. But then Vegeta comes in clutch with a destroyer type move that could erase Gas if it landed, and it does enough to distract him because you know it came too early in the chapter, so it's not gonna work, is it really, because Gas puts a shield up. And I guess Hakai energy that can destroy anything is ineffective against shields. Right. Then after some very intense pushing around of energy, and the Heeters just watching from afar, and still assuming that Gas is the strongest, Vegeta chooses to stop playing the team game, and instead goes for the personal touch by jumping over the energy, surprising Gas from above, and Goku has to divert the attack away from a conveniently placed Shigarian city. And of course, we see where Ultra Ego is really coming into its own, and I think the next chapter is going to be very, very cathartic. In the heat of battle, Vegeta's only getting stronger, and Gas has no match for this. He's going to get angrier, and this could lead to more openings. But this is where the chapter ends, with Vegeta on the charge. All in all, I'll start this off by saying that, in isolation, the idea of Goku figuring out more about his past and starting to remember it, including seeing Gine for the first time in a flashback, is quite an interesting idea, and that is something that should be explored. In a dedicated saga or mini-arc. Not in the middle of a completely different story where Goku had no real sway in the original direction of it. Not to mention it completely undermines Goku's original premise, that he was just a random low-class Saiyan that rose to prominence. Now, it turns out, thanks to Bardock's wish and all that, and now the fact he remembers it and now his relevance in the saga, that, oh, it was all predestiny. What? Okay. I don't understand why Dragon Ball Super is trying to diminish the importance of its main character, but hey, if you want to try and mix things up, I guess you're doing it. I will say that. Haverock and I have been wanting Goku to be experimented on in terms of his plot and arc. Well, not like this. And why am I like this though? It's because up until now, Goku had been the minor character of this saga who was aiding Granolah and Vegeta in their joint evolution and character development throughout their understanding of their newly recent acquired games. We were happy that Goku had chosen to step aside and allow these two the chance to figure things out on their own, instead of blindly running the show in the typical generic fashion that we are accustomed to all too well, which is now exactly what we're getting. Somehow I don't even know how it happened. Goku is now the main focus of Granola's story, all thanks to Bardock, and most likely negative comments from fans that they thought the thing was boring, but to us and have, we liked it. And I cannot stress this enough. This plot device could have worked in its own plot, not when it effectively hijacks another one. Also, relax. That leak of Goku and Vegeta wearing Saiyan armor, that was just a little bit of fan service for a little bit of dialogue between them and Naito. When they fight Gas, they're in their regular gear. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that were a deliberate tactic on the original creator's part to generate hype for that chapter. And Toyotaro had something to do with that idea. He knows how the drafts are released and that the Western audiences of late are very hot on these developments, and that it would naturally get a reaction. You see, folks, you've been played by the artist of the manga, since these bouts of rage and anger and frustration, blind at that, towards these drafts is becoming incredibly predictable. So you really gotta get a grip. You don't want to be played by Toyotaro, do you? When it comes to the actual fight though, they are in their trademark attire, like I said. I am quite relieved about that, because if they did fight in that armour for this final round, I would have been even more miffed than I am already, because you're taking away even more of their identity, and it would have been just a Bardock facsimile fighting Gas. Oh what, he's dictating what they're wearing now? All because of Monito's massive crush on him, and thinking that he's the best thing since sliced base bread? I don't think Monito quite remembers the fact that he was a Saiyan that had killed Cerealians before he met him, and that he only chose to spare you out of luck. But Namekian crushes aside, the sight of Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct working together, that is definitely an iconic shot, and does at least assure that Vegeta fans out there will see this technique come to fruition, and it will get a chance to show its true potential against Gas. You see, the whole point of that technique is that as long as Vegeta has the drive and will to fight, he will keep going, no matter how injured or tired he gets. With Granolah, he slowly started to lose said drive to beat him into a pulp, since he was starting to see a reflection of himself in that Cerealian, and he didn't want that for him, thusly showing mercy, and it didn't work. Here though, against Gas, who to him is far less redeemable, I think there's no holds barred. Vegeta is going to be a dynamo with this one. And even though he might not win outright because Goku's around and all, because he has to win, he will certainly be able to use his power effectively, at least, against a being who's easily rattled, yeah? Now, speaking of Gas, he is completely unaware of the cheat book that the Saiyans had been reading, well, cheat scouter, before he got back from his little trip across the universe. I would like to think that he had learnt a thing or two since then, since that fight 40 years ago, and that we won't get the same progression here as we did back then, because if we did, we can just read chapter 83 again for the conclusion of the saga itself. Why bother reading any more? At this point, I just want Gas to reach his character arc's end. I'm sort of past caring now. Even though I think there is a chance for redemption, or at least some sense of regret on his part should he be defeated, I just feel that now he's just going to be taking the fall for Alex's ploy, and that the rest of the Heeters may just bounce or be offed instantaneously, leaving their little brother to his doom perhaps? I could be being a little facetious here, but that's how I feel right now, how jaded I feel. But one thing I have to remind you all is that we shouldn't blame Toyotaro exclusively. Toriyama is the top person calling the overall shots here when it comes to how the story as a whole moves along. And with his bullet point style, it's most likely the fact that Toyotaro can do certain things on his own, sure, but when it comes to certain points within the story, they have to be met. Otherwise there'll be meddling, or corrections, or even trouble for him afoot. You can start to see that in a way, like how a certain plot thread is going and then suddenly it goes way off in another direction, like with the Bardock revelation. It just feels so sudden and jarring and totally unlike how the story was intending to track. So, before you hurl expletives at Toyotaro exclusively, think of what guidelines and structures he has to work with. Despite being the visual lead of the manga, he still has people to answer to, and people who will derail his intended vision and keep it to the script should he divert from it too far. In the end, this chapter is an extremely mixed bag for me. The sight of Goku and Vegeta actively fighting together, and making good progress against Gas is a noteworthy thing to point out, but the Bardock effect left a sour taste in my mouth that I really can't shake off. Not to mention the overall moral of this story, in that we are being reminded of Saiyan pride and how powerful it is, and that it can achieve anything. Really? You think we don't know that? Saiyan pride is one of the most common things about Dragon Ball that we know. The Saiyans can't stop going on about it. We're very much aware of said point. Admittedly, I am curious how the Ultra powers will work together, how they'll gel, and the original juxtaposition of Whis and Beerus' tutelage with these two. They'll most likely dominate Gas with their combined efforts and win out. And the one thing that can be said is that Dragon Ball Super does give us some pretty good examples of combat every now and again, and Toyotaro is getting better with how he expresses said moments. But the way we got here, with Bardock being the bastion of the final plot device this much, and that Goku was somehow able to be pulled back into relevancy in the saga when we thought that he wasn't going to be the case, it just feels a little sad in my mind. But hey, the fight looked pretty cool at least. Now if you want to see what we may have missed out on or some other examples of our long-form discussions, look to our podcast channel Up on the Lookout for more in-depth reviews of the sagas and mangas of Dragon Ball Super, or maybe one of my other discussions. And I will see you in the next video. Catch you later!